All right, so, running a business here in Ireland, you start thinking about, well, have I got everything covered right?
Yeah.
And we've got a stack of your questions here all about business assurance.
Okay.
And we're going to take a deep dive into some of these materials, focusing on two big ones, key person insurance and shareholder protection.
Yeah. And these are really important, especially for Irish businesses, because let's face it,
Mm.
we rely so much on homegrown companies, especially the SMEs.
Absolutely, the backbone of the country, right?
Absolutely.
So let's cut through the jargon. When we talk about business assurance,
hmm
what are we really talking about?
You know that sigh of relief when you put those extra locks on the shed?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that peace of mind knowing you're prepared for anything.
Yeah.
And for Irish businesses, especially the ones that have to be quite lean and agile, those safeguards are even more crucial.
Okay, so let's say you've got your metaphorical shed, you've got the locks on it, you're feeling pretty good.
hmm
You mentioned you were curious about key person insurance.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
So this is a big one, especially here in Ireland. We've got a vibrant startup scene, right? Imagine a tech company based here in Dublin, and their entire business model is built around their star developer.
Oh, I know the type. They practically live on energy drinks and sleep under their desk. Right.
Exactly. But then what happens if that person, decides to take their talents to a beach in Bali?
Or gets hit by the proverbial bus. Not that we want to think about that, but yeah, it happens.
Exactly. And that's where key person insurance comes in. It's about providing that financial safety net if that key person, for whatever reason, isn't around.
So it's not about replacing them.
Not about replacing them. You can't replace some people.
Yeah, some people are one of a kind.
It's more about giving the business breathing room, time to adapt, maybe find a successor, but keep things running.
So it's that bridging the gap, giving them that time.
Exactly. And what's interesting, particularly for Irish businesses, is that the premiums you pay for key person insurance are often tax deductible.
Okay, now we're talking. Everyone loves a tax break, right?
Right. But, and this is important, while the premiums are generally deductible, if there's a payout from the policy, that could be subject to corporation tax as well.
Ah, so it's not all rosy then. It's not just free money.
It's not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's important to get good advice. Talk to someone who knows the Irish tax system inside and out.
And what about the shareholders, the people who actually own a piece of the business? You had some questions about shareholder protection too.
Yeah, that's another one that's really important, especially over here.
Right.
We've got a lot of private limited companies.
Okay, so let's say you and a couple of friends, you've always dreamed of opening a craft brewery together, somewhere in West Cork. You're all equal partners, sharing pints and profits.
Sounds idyllic.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But then something happens, life throws a curveball, and one of you can't be involved anymore.
And that's exactly when shareholder protection is crucial. It's about making sure that if one of the shareholders, for whatever reason, isn't there anymore, that the business can carry on without a hitch.
Right. You don't want something like that to derail everything you've built together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the way it often works here is through something called a cross-option agreement. You can think of it like a prenup.
Okay. But for business partners instead of.
Exactly. So in your brewery, if, sadly, one of you wasn't around anymore, that agreement would set out how their shares would be offered to the other partners.
So it's all above board. Everyone knows what's happening. No nasty surprises.
Precisely. Keeps things clean, keeps the shares where they belong with the people who are actually running the brewery.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do you actually fund something like that, shareholder protection? Where does the money come from?
So there are a few options. Life insurance is a common one. It's pretty straightforward. The payout from the policy can then be used to buy out the shares from, say, the deceased shareholder's estate.
Right. So it's there if you need it.
Yeah. Another option is what they call a company-owned policy. So the company itself actually takes out life insurance on the shareholders. This can have some tax advantages, but it's a bit more complicated to set up.
Okay.
And then there's the sinking fund.
Sinking fund. That sounds a bit ominous, doesn't it? Like you're stashing cash away for a rainy day.
Well, it is a bit like that. Basically, the company puts aside a certain amount of money regularly.
Okay.
And that money's specifically there to cover a potential buyout should the need arise.
So you've got a few different options, each with their own pros and cons, I guess. It's like choosing between a full Irish or, a nice plate of smoked salmon. It depends on your taste and what you're in the mood for.
I like the way you think. And you wouldn't order a three-course meal if you were just popping in for a quick coffee, would you? The important thing is to figure out which fund method is the best fit for you.
Right. Now, we've talked a lot about key person and shareholder protection, but in your research, you also came across some other types of business assurance, didn't you?
You did. Each business is different, so you need the right kind of protection. For example, you had some questions about partnership protection, which is essential for, well, partnerships.
So, like law firms.
Exactly, or accountants, architects, that sort of thing. If you've got a partnership and one person can't continue, this type of cover helps the remaining partners buy out their share.
So it's about protecting the partners, but also the business itself.
Exactly. And then you've got business loan protection, which is pretty self-explanatory. It covers loan repayments if something happens to a key person who's also a guarantor on those loans.
Ah, right. So the business isn't left with a mountain of debt if the worst should happen.
Exactly. And finally, you touched upon co-director insurance. More and more businesses in Ireland are run by teams these days, so it's becoming increasingly relevant.
Okay, so how does that work?
Say you've got your digital marketing agency, two directors, equal shares. Co-director insurance would provide a safety net if one of them were to die. The payout would allow the other director to buy out their shares, ensuring a smooth transition and allowing the business to keep going.
Like a business will for directors.
Exactly. And what I found interesting is that your research went even further. You were also looking into risks like cyber attacks and even the whole Brexit situation.
Well, you can never be too careful, can you?
Uh,
It's like trying to keep all the plates spinning at once sometimes.
yeah.
But seriously, how do these new kinds of risks play into all of this business assurance stuff?
That's a great question, and it just shows how Irish businesses can't rest on their laurels. Cyber attacks, for instance. They're becoming more frequent and sophisticated, and if you're not prepared, the impact can be massive.
Like leaving the back door open, just asking for trouble. So what can you do about it?
Cyber insurance is becoming essential these days, especially for businesses that do a lot of online transactions. It can help cover the costs of a cyber attack, things like recovering data, legal fees, that kind of thing.
Right, like an insurance policy for the digital age.
Exactly. And then there's Brexit, which is still causing uncertainty even now.
True, it's like that elephant in the room that everyone's trying to ignore.
Irish businesses need to be ready for anything. From supply chain issues to changes in regulations, it's all about being adaptable and having a backup plan.
Okay, so after covering all that, from key person and shareholder protection to cyber threats and Brexit, I need a strong cuppa. Where do we even start with all this?
It can feel a bit overwhelming, that's for sure.
Okay, so after covering all that, from key person and shareholder protection to cyber threats and Brexit, I need a strong cuppa. Where do we even start with all this?
It can be a bit overwhelming, that's for sure. But you don't have to become some kind of business assurance expert overnight.
No, you just got to keep the lights on and focus on what you do best, whether that's baking cakes or building websites.
Exactly. It's about having that peace of mind, knowing you've got a plan so you can focus on the day-to-day.
Right.
And the thing is, there's no magic formula, right? What works for one business might not work for another.
It's like those one weird trick ad. You can't just copy and paste what works for someone else.
Exactly. You need to look at your own business, your own circumstances. And that's where getting some good advice can be invaluable.
Because trying to figure out all the ins and outs of this stuff on your own, that's a recipe for a headache.
It is. It really is. Talk to someone who deals with this stuff day in, day out. A financial advisor, a solicitor, even an insurance broker. They can help you see the bigger picture.
Right, get you set up with the right kind of protection.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, they say, and that's never been more true than it is in business today.
You've got to stay ahead of the game, right?
Absolutely.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? But this is just the start, really.
It is. It's about getting those cogs turning, getting you thinking about the bigger picture.
So to wrap things up, what would you say are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, first off, don't let all this overwhelm you. It's about taking things step by step. And remember, business assurance, it's not just a cost. It's an investment in your peace of mind, in your future.
An investment in the things that really matter.
Exactly. Now, as you go away and think about all of this, think about the challenges you're facing, but also the opportunities, right?
PV, there are always opportunities, even when things are tough.
Absolutely. And ask yourself, how can I use business assurance to help me overcome those challenges and grab those opportunities with both hands?
Great question to end on. As always, we encourage you to take another look at the materials you sent us. Do your own research, and don't be afraid to reach out to an expert if you need a bit of guidance.
It could be the best decision you ever make.
Until next time, take care and best of luck out there.